and I'm a preacher's stepkid, which qualifies me for nothing. I'm just an old music teacher, and I've heard lots of wonderful stories about your previous pastor, and I've been able to watch online to the people who've been delivering the message each week, and you guys are very blessed that this is continuing, and 57 years, my goodness, I can't imagine. But I will tell you that I think probably one of the biggest blessings I noticed this morning with my music teacher ears on is the piano player has not missed a note all morning. So perfect piano playing. So later on, I'm gonna be in the book of Luke, chapter 18 at the very beginning. So if you want to turn there, I'll eventually get there. A 25-year-old man prays for his 51-year-old father to be cured of cancer. His father is a popular pastor and pastoral counselor. People are praying for him all over the country. A 55-year-old man gets a call from his brother that their 26-year-old nephew had been shot at his teaching job. Nobody knew if he was okay. Nobody had heard anything in 2 hours. Texts were sent, and within minutes, friends and family members were praying all over the country. A woman who is 7 months pregnant receives a call that her 57-year-old father died suddenly of an aortic aneurysm. There was no time to pray. He was just gone. His wife of 36 years is now a widow. The woman and her 2 sisters suddenly have no father. So today we're going to talk about prayer, and I cannot think of a more perfect start than Mike up here and the prayer offerings that you offered. I literally looked over at my wife and said, I think Mike just preached part of my sermon. And anyway, we'll move from there. So I've got a couple of questions. What would happen if we got everything we wanted? You may recall a funny movie many years ago with Jim Carrey called Bruce Almighty, where God tells Bruce that he is going to be the role of God because he's complaining all the time about his lot in life. And when Bruce got tired of all the prayer requests, he just decided to answer them all with yes in one fell swoop. Everybody got their prayers answered. And I remember the biggest thing, it was in the city of Buffalo, and everybody won the lottery. And everybody got $11, I think, something like that. So it didn't really work out. You know, sometimes you may be like me too. Sometimes we can get into those prayers that can become frivolous. Okay, I'm an OU grad. I was in the band there many years ago, and you know, this time of year I'm praying, God, can OU find a defense? You know, please. You know. Sometimes we pray, God, can I afford this new car? God, I pray that Walmart is not out of bacon, please. And it's funny. I think we all do that with good intentions. As a musician too, I've discovered I really like to pay attention to what people are writing in their songs, and some of them are just fun things about everyday life. But I believe we have some modern day psalmists in our world that can really show that maybe they understand a little bit about this dilemma. Pop artist Billie Eilish sings, I had a dream, I got everything I wanted. And if I'm being honest, it might have been a nightmare. I think there's a lot of truth to that. The truth in our world, and you could literally listen to yourself speak about the people in your lives you're praying for. There's light and darkness right up next to each other constantly. Another famous musician writes in a song, Dave Matthews writes, lying in the park on a beautiful day, sunshine in the grass and the children play, sirens passing, fire engine red, someone's house is burning down on a day like this. Funny the way it is, if you think about it, somebody's going hungry, someone else is eating out. Funny the way it is, not right or wrong, somebody's heart is broken and it becomes your favorite song. Funny the way it is, not right or wrong, on a soldier's last breath, his baby's being born. Funny the way it is, if you think about it, one kid walks 10 miles to school and another's dropping out. The north side of downtown Tulsa hosts a thriving area that concludes the top AA ballpark in the country, another park that hosts music events. It's a beautiful area. There are museums, a thriving restaurant district. 1 block north, there are houses with boarded up windows. 1 block east is a small block of shops representing what is left of the Greenwood district. 1 block west is the John 3:16 mission, Salvation Army, the Day Center for the Homeless, and Iron Gate, which is a standalone soup kitchen and grocery pantry that's been built there in the last couple of years. And it's clear that light and darkness are sharing the same neighborhood. You might ask, with all of this good and bad that is happening simultaneously, do prayers even work? Bad things and good things happen to praying people. We've witnessed that this morning already. It's confusing. Why did Jesus make a point of teaching the disciples to pray? Jesus knew about these dilemmas, and he knew that he still had a job to do. Let's take a look at one of his parables, again in Luke 18, verses 1 through 8. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He said, in a certain town there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with the plea, grant me justice against my adversary. But for some time he refused. He finally said to himself, even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice so that she won't eventually come and attack me. And the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? I'm interested in the word quickly. Quickly is on God's terms, not necessarily our terms. Jesus is asking us, his disciples, to be persistent in prayer. The moral of the parable is, if the unjust judge will bring justice to someone he barely knows, surely God will bring justice to his chosen people who pray constantly. That's powerful. Jesus is saying that you and I are so important that he wants to have a relationship with us. He wants to talk to us. He wants to hear from us. Jesus modeled a persistent prayer life during his ministry. You can find it everywhere, and he even modeled how to do it. Jesus departed from the group to pray after every major event. If you look through the Bible, you find a long time where he was healing people. Then he disappeared up in the mountains to pray. He fed 5,000. He disappeared to go pray and reconnect. And that was his human side needing to reconnect with his Father. He taught the Lord's Prayer, and he taught his disciples how to teach it to other people. He thought it was important. And even at the end of his life, he prayed desperate prayers. Again, his human side coming out. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he prayed from his human side, oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. I firmly believe that Jesus knew what he had to do, and he was still asking for another way. That speaks to me. That gives me some hope that when my doubts creep in, that even Jesus had some questions, but he did what he had to do. His final words, my God, why have you forsaken me? And at the end, he claimed, it is finished. Author and pastor Tyler Staton writes, only nothing seemed finished. In fact, nothing seemed to change at all in those days and weeks that followed that victory cry. Herod still occupied the throne, ruling like a corrupt autocrat. Every street was still patrolled by Roman soldiers who were oppressing 99% of the indigenous population. The temple curtain that had been torn down the middle was sewn back up, and the priests kept on restricting access to God for some. The streets outside still overflowed with poor beggars without a roof to find shelter under, and the suffering patients without a doctor to receive treatment from. The same day Jesus healed a blind man, 10 more were born blind who didn't receive sight. The night he invited a prostitute to be honored company at his dinner table, 100 others were objectified by another sleazy patron. The day he rehabilitated one tax collector, plenty of others exploited the poor out of their last penny. And the day after he died looked a whole lot like the day before. When Jesus said it is finished, he was claiming a new beginning, a new agreement between God and his people. So I wonder if you're like me, and sometimes we don't always recognize the need for prayer. I know when I spend several days with ruffled feathers over my job or busy and getting home at 10 o'clock after a ball game, 11 o'clock, and I'm in a frazzle, and I realize, you know what? I haven't really checked in with God in 3 or 4 days. I haven't taken the time. And then when I do, everything changes. What is blocking us if we don't always choose prayer? Author and Franciscan priest Richard Rohr says this: sooner or later, if you're on a classic spiritual schedule, some event, person, death, idea, or relationship will enter your life that you simply cannot deal with using your present skill set, your acquired knowledge, or your strong willpower. Spiritually speaking, you must be led to the edge of your own private resources. Stated in our language here, you must lose at something. This is the only way that life, fate, God, grace, mystery can get you to change. Let go of your egocentric preoccupations and go on the further and larger journey. Those are some pretty powerful words. I think we've all had times where we felt like we've lost. And I think if you can still come out of that and pray, and listening to your prayer requests and listening to the people that need it, sometimes being in that low spot is what helps you get that perspective. What truths must we accept to live a lifestyle that includes persistent prayer? The truth is, the world is not finished. We must live in the world, but not of the world. The truth is, we can't have light without darkness. The truth is, we can't have high without low. The truth is, we can't have tall without short. The truth is, we don't know how important air is until our head is underwater. The truth is, we can't have the resurrection without the crucifixion. The truth is, we wouldn't need God if we got everything we ever wanted. So here we stand in this sometimes confusing space between feeling God's blessings one day and suffering the next. But God still wants us to ask for what we want. We did that at the beginning of this service. God still wants to be in a relationship with us. God wants to celebrate our highs and comfort us in our lows. The truth is, God doesn't claim all of our problems will be solved if we follow him. He just says, you don't have to do this life alone. Talk to me. I'm here. I'm listening. You can dump all of your burdens on me. I can take it. So we must pray continuously. I think you agree, this world is not our final landing place. Theologian and author C.S. Lewis states simply, if we find ourselves with the desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we were made for another world. The way to this other world, the true kingdom of God starts with prayer. Return with me to the beginning of my message. You're probably wondering how some of those stories turned out, because they're true. A 25-year-old man prays for his 51-year-old father to be cured of cancer. His father is a popular pastor and counselor. People pray for him all over the country. Everyone celebrates when the cancer goes into remission. 2 months later, the cancer is back and ravages his body. Tumors fill his abdomen and choke off his stomach. He literally dies of starvation. The 25-year-old man who prayed constantly is devastated. His father is gone. A 55-year-old man gets a call from his brother that their 26-year-old nephew had been shot at his teaching job. Nobody knew if he was okay. The nephew had sent a short text to his mother with very little information, but nobody had heard anything in 2 hours. More texts were sent out, and within minutes, friends and family members were praying all over the country. The man gets into his car to drive the 5 hours to the hospital. The man prays, "God, your will be done." But after a few minutes of repeating this out loud to an empty car, the man breaks down and screams, "God, please save him. You have to save him." He screams these words over and over until tears streams down his face. 10 minutes later, his brother calls to report their nephew had survived. The bullet had stopped 1 millimeter from his aorta. The praying man in both stories is me. I lost my father right when I got out of college. And my nephew was the teacher in the Mansfield, Texas school shooting almost 2 years ago that survived. And the bullet is still 1 millimeter from his aorta. A woman who is 7 months pregnant receives a call that her 57-year-old father died suddenly of an aortic aneurysm. There was no time to pray. He was just gone. His wife of 36 years is now a widow. The pregnant woman and her 2 sisters suddenly have no father. That woman is my wife of 27 years, Marty. And her mom, who is here with us too, that was her husband of 36 years. We didn't get a chance to pray. You might ask how I can continue to pray after losing my father. I'm actually 5 years older than he ever was at this point, despite the countless months of prayer. You might also ask if I'm confused that my nephew survived despite my desperate, demanding prayers. Guys, when I was in the car driving to Dallas, I was demanding to God. I tried to say the right thing at the beginning, but my human side popped in. You might ask my wife what it felt like to suddenly lose her father, or my mother-in-law, her husband, without an opportunity to pray for him at all. The truth is, we've never felt 100% comfortable with this. The most beautiful part of the last story occurred 4 weeks later, as our only child was born almost a month premature. Friends and family members prayed. The child was small but healthy. There was no complications with either mother or child. Marty and I were parents, and Pam was a grandmother for the first time. The child's name is Claire, and she is 22 years old. She received her degree from the University of Oklahoma just last week. She marched in the Pride of Oklahoma marching band and had to endure her last OU Texas game with a 49-0 drubbing. And there's ever proof that things are never perfect. She was 3-1 against Texas, though, so I'll give her that. She is a wonderful young lady who never met her grandfathers, because in the first story, that was my father, who died when he was 51. She reminds us of the promise that Jesus is the light of the world, and the darkness shall never overcome it. What can we take from all of this? You've heard some real stories, and I've heard some of your real stories. We should pray constantly. Now, I know we don't know each other very well yet, but I'll bet, like me, you have some things in your life that are hard to pray about. Guess what? That's all of us. We're all there. You're not alone in that area. Let's have a little experiment. Complete this thought in your head. I want to see if some of us have the same answer. Silently complete this sentence in your mind about someone you have lost. I wish I could have had blank. For me, it's I wish I could have had one more conversation. Anybody else? A few people? Yeah. I think we can all identify with that type of longing to have one more conversation. I knew my father-in-law for 5 years. Never really got to know him on the next level. And I miss that. But that longing to talk to Jesus, to talk to God in prayer, to have just one more conversation, we've got that opportunity every single day. The goal of prayer is that we end up with that kind of longing for a personal relationship with Jesus. Morning prayer ends, and the first thought in your mind is, I can't wait till a midday prayer so I can have one more conversation. I can't wait to pray this evening over my dinner and have one more conversation. I can't wait to wake up and drink my coffee tomorrow morning and have one more conversation. The one more conversation is there in every moment of your life. Prayer is the gift of a lifeline for all of us who've lost, but still long to love and be loved. Because we've all lost at some point. Jesus prayed constantly during his ministry. He taught his disciples to pray. He sent them in the world to teach others to pray. And at the climactic moment, he prayed like a desperate human that God the Father would spare him. And he got no answer. For 3 days anyway. Because the big answer came. A few weeks ago, my friend Caleb Carter preached that we should live at the feet of Jesus through the good and the bad. That's great stuff. God asks us to pray persistently through the good and the bad. My wife will tell you Martina McBride is the queen of country music. And I imagine some people in here might debate her over that because there's several that have been called the queen of country music. But I think Martina might be another modern day psalmist. She writes, God is great, and sometimes life ain't good. And when I pray, it doesn't always turn out like I think it should. But I do it anyway. I do it anyway. In closing, I'd like to ask you to think of the highest moment of your life. One of those real mountaintop moments. Compare it with the lowest moment. Imagine experiencing both of those events over a period of 3 days. Because Jesus did. And if he can pray to his Father through all of that, surely we can. Now have a hymn of invitation, I believe, number 602.